Good evening, lovely family. I hope this story finds you in a relaxed environment and in good health. Before you judge and say this story is unrealistic, consider that love comes in all shapes and sizes. It doesn't always come in the packaging you expect. Many people are alone because they are waiting for a person who looks a certain way. But what if you opened your heart to the love that can come in an unexpected package? Miriam Njovu had always been proud of the path she had carved for herself. At 35, she was already a civil engineer with a bachelor's degree from the University of Zambia. For the past 10 years she had worked for the Lusaka Water and Sewerage Company, mostly stationed at their Kabilonga office. The work was stable and respectable, but the pay barely stretched far enough. Her parents were growing older. Her two younger brothers were still trying to find their footing in life. Miriam found she could not afford to move out of her parents' home and look after her parents at the same time. She took care of all the bills, bought the groceries and paid her brother's university fees. When she saw the advert on LinkedIn, she read it twice. East Wing Enterprises, a Chinese construction company, was hiring experienced civil engineers for a large development project in Lusaka. The salary was double what she currently earned for a 2-year contract, with a generous gratuity at the end of each year. Miriam leaned back in her office chair and whispered to herself. 2 years, she said softly. Just 2 years. 2 years of sacrifice could help her family breathe again. Anthony was Miriam's boyfriend at the time. He didn't like the idea at all. Anthony liked Miriam, but mostly because she was beautiful. He liked arriving at parties with her on his arm, liked the way his friends stared at her when she walked in. But he didn't always like who she was. One evening while they sat in his car outside her parents' home, he shook his head after hearing about the new job. Construction, he said. Miriam, that's a man's job. She folded her arms. I'm an engineer, Anthony. Yes, but you're a pretty engineer, he said, grinning. Why are you going to stand on dusty sites with men shouting and carrying cement? Because they are paying me twice my salary. Anthony sighed dramatically. You should quit and find something more suitable. Miriam laughed. I'm not quitting a job I haven't even started. Anthony ended things. He wasn't ready to become a laughingstock. The construction site was chaotic. Concrete mixers roared. Workers shouted instructions. Steel rods clanged together like bells. Miriam adjusted her white helmet and watched everything with wide eyes. This was very different from working in an air-conditioned office. That was when she first saw Wei Zhong. He stood confidently in the middle of the site, speaking firmly to a group of workers. Not like that, he said, gesturing toward the half-built wall. The support beam must align here. He noticed Miriam watching. He walked over. You must be Engineer Njovu, he said politely. His English carried a soft Chinese accent. Yes, Miriam replied. And you must be Mr. Wei Zhong. Wei smiled slightly. Not Mr., he said. Just Wei. Mr. Zhong is my father. I will help you learn the site procedures. Miriam nodded. I hope you're patient, she said. This is my first time supervising an active construction site. Wei chuckled. This is very different from working in an office. Still, you look like you're not afraid to get your hands dirty. They smiled. Wei was from Beijing. At 36 years old, he was already leading the construction of the apartment blocks in Marconi for East Wing Enterprises. He was brilliant, calm, and surprisingly kind. Over the following weeks, he taught Miriam everything she needed to know. How to read the physical site layout, the drawings, and how to check concrete strength. She also learned how to supervise teams safely. Look, he said once, pointing at a section of foundation. If the reinforcement here is wrong, the entire structure will suffer later. Miriam nodded thoughtfully. Months passed and Miriam grew confident under Wei's mentorship. One afternoon, senior executives from East Wing arrived for a site inspection. Wei had already helped Miriam prepare her presentation for the senior executives. You have to do the presentation on your own, he said. Her eyes widened. Me? Don't worry, I will answer any questions they may have, Wei replied calmly. But you should present all the information we worked on and show them the progress so far. When the executives arrived, Miriam stood before them with her clipboard. She spoke clearly. Our team has completed the structural framework for Block B. We are currently reinforcing the foundations for the next phase while maintaining strict safety protocols. She explained timelines, safety measures, and completion targets with professional confidence. Wei watched her with quiet pride. After the executives left, the site slowly emptied. Workers packed their tools. Engines shut down. Soon the building site was silent. Wei turned to Miriam. "That was excellent," he said softly. She laughed nervously. "I thought I was going to faint." Wei stepped closer and cupped her face in his hands. Miriam froze for a second, looking straight into his eyes. "You did not faint," he said to her gently. "You were brilliant." Over time, they grew close. Very close. They shared lunches, jokes, and occasionally stolen glances across the room. Sometimes they went dancing at a nearby club. One night, while music played loudly around them, Miriam asked, "So why didn't you date anyone in China?" Wei shrugged. "I was busy building my career. I didn't have much money. In Beijing, dates are very expensive, about $200 per date. I was only making $500 a month. And now?" Wei smiled. "Now I have a bit more money and I feel more confident. I guess the good Lord was keeping me single for you." Miriam smiled. When they were all alone in one of the rooms at the site. Miriam was rehearsing for her next presentation to some investors and Wei was listening to her practice. She was very nervous and he could feel her nerves. He wanted to comfort her, and cupped his hands around her face again. This time they both felt a jolt of electricity. Before he knew it, Wei was kissing Miriam. At first, he was surprised by his own actions, but when he realized she was kissing him back, they both felt relaxed and confident. When they finally pulled back from each other, they instantly knew that there was no going back. Something definitely special was happening between them. After that day, every time they were alone together, they would be cuddling and getting all loved up. No one at the construction site suspected a thing. They hid their relationship well. They took up dancing lessons at the nearby salsa dance studio and spent most of their evenings there, getting to know each other away from the office. Everything was going so well for them. They were so in love. But happiness rarely stays simple. One afternoon Wei received a phone call from China. His father had fallen ill. Doctors had admitted him to a hospital in Beijing for observation. Wei tried to stay calm, but Miriam could see the worry in his eyes. "My mother is alone," he said quietly. "She cannot manage." "You should go," Miriam said gently. Wei shook his head. "I don't want to leave you." "You have to," she insisted. Wei was an only child. His parents needed him. But the thought of him leaving made Miriam's chest ache. When Miriam left the office one day, she was very upset. She thought that their relationship was over. She thought once he got back to China, he would forget about her, meet a Chinese girl and settle down. When she checked her phone, she found 5 missed calls from Wei. She debated whether to call him back or not. Maybe it was better to end things now than to keep hoping. Miriam spent the weekend indoors, ignoring all of Wei's missed calls and messages. On Saturday afternoon, there was a knock at the door. When Miriam answered the door, she couldn't believe her eyes. Wei was standing at her door. She felt a little embarrassed as she had no makeup on and her hair was in its natural state. He had never seen her before with her short, natural hair. He told her she looked lovely, even without wigs and makeup. Miriam's mother came to the door to see who it was and when she saw Wei, she invited him in. After brief introductions, Miriam's parents excused themselves and left Miriam and Wei to chat in the living room. Wei turned to Miriam. "I have to go to China," he said. Her heart sank. "But I will come back." "Men say that," Miriam said cautiously. Wei smiled. "You should visit Beijing." Her eyes widened. "Visit? I want my parents to finally meet the woman responsible for distracting me from construction." Miriam cried. She realized how much she would miss him. They both cried, afraid that the distance would make them forget. But Wei looked at Miriam straight in the eyes and said, "I will buy you a ticket to come visit me in China. I promise." Over the next few weeks, Wei and Miriam stayed in close touch through WhatsApp video calls and endless messages. Sometimes they talked for hours. Other times they just stared at each other through the screen while eating dinner. "Are you eating noodles again?" Miriam would tease. Wei would shrug. "This is China. What do you expect?" Pizza? And you're judging mine, Shima? Miriam laughed. One evening, while Miriam was just finishing a long day at work in Lusaka, her phone buzzed. Wei said to Miriam, "Check your email." "Why?" Miriam replied suspiciously. "Is this another one of your funny videos?" "Just check," he insisted. When she opened the email, Miriam nearly dropped her phone. "Wei," she shouted on the video call. "Is this real?" Wei smiled proudly. "Return ticket to Beijing." "You're serious?" "Very serious. I also paid for your visa and airport transport." Miriam covered her face in disbelief. "You are spoiling me too much." Wei grinned. "Don't worry. I'm investing." "Investing in what?" she asked. "In future wife material," he joked. Miriam burst out laughing. "Ah. So this is a business deal now?" "Best investment of my life." A few weeks later, Miriam boarded the plane to Beijing. It was the longest flight she had ever taken. She slept, watched movies, ate airplane food that she politely pretended to enjoy, and kept checking the flight map every 20 minutes. Finally, when the plane landed in Beijing, her heart started racing. At the arrival's gate, Wei stood nervously holding a bouquet of red roses and a fluffy teddy bear that he hoped she would like. When Miriam walked through the doors, he waved excitedly. "Miriam." She ran toward him and they hugged tightly. "You actually came." Wei said. "Of course I came. After all the money you spent, I had no choice." Miriam joked. He handed her the flowers and teddy bear. "What is this?" she laughed. "Am I 10 years old?" Wei looked confused. "Girls like teddy bears. We like them when we're 5. "Too late now," he said proudly. "You must keep it." After leaving her bags at Wei's apartment, he announced proudly, "I'm taking you to the best Chinese restaurant in the city." "Oh really?" Miriam asked. "Are you sure it's not just instant noodles again?" "No. My cousin owns the restaurant." "Ah," she nodded knowingly. "So if the food is bad, we cannot complain." At the restaurant, Wei's cousin welcomed them warmly. "Ah Wei. So this is the famous Miriam." Miriam blinked. "Famous?" Wei quickly interrupted. "He talks too much." During dinner, Miriam tried using chopsticks for the first time. Wei was teaching her how to use them. After several failed attempts, a dumpling flew off the table and landed on Wei's shirt. Wei looked down at it slowly. Miriam froze. "Ah, that dumpling wanted to say hello," she said. Wei burst out laughing. "Maybe it didn't like you. Or maybe it wants a fork." Miriam replied. Miriam stayed in a nearby hotel Wei had paid for. He was polite enough to go home every night. When they met during the day, Wei took her to see the tourist attractions Beijing had to offer. They had a lovely time, taking pictures in front of famous tourist sites. They met up with Wei's cousin a few more times.
I traveled all the way to China just to see you.
I invited you here. I am so happy you are here.
The next day, Miriam was nervous because she was going to meet Wei's parents. "What if they don't like me?" she asked while getting ready. "They will like you," Wei said calmly. "How do you know?" "My mother already told all the neighbors about you." "What?" "Yes. She said my son found a beautiful woman from Africa." Miriam shook her head. "Now I'm under pressure." When they arrived, Wei's parents welcomed her warmly. His mother hugged her immediately. "So pretty," she said. Miriam smiled shyly. "Thank you." Wei's father, who had already been discharged from the hospital, looked much healthier and relaxed. "I am happy to finally meet the woman who keeps my son awake at night talking on the phone," he said jokingly. Miriam laughed. Wei sighed dramatically. "Now my secrets are being revealed." His father chuckled. "Good. Now she knows the truth." They all laughed together, and Miriam immediately felt at home. Wei's father explained that he had only been suffering from exhaustion and needed rest. Now he was recovering well and spending most of his time resting. As they sat drinking tea together, Wei's mother chatted politely with Miriam, making her feel welcome. Wei's parents were elders in the church. They had raised Wei in a Christian household, so they had a brief Bible study session with Miriam. They explained the importance of having faith in God and how things would work out well for them if they put God first. Miriam had been raised Catholic, so she was able to understand what they meant. Eventually, time came for Miriam to go back home. It was not easy, but they said their goodbyes at their airport. Wei was hopeful he would be able to come back to work in Zambia, but he did not make any promises to Miriam yet. Back in Zambia, Miriam carried on working every day at the construction site. The money was good and she was able to cover the family living expenses. She was grateful. But every time she looked at Wei's old desk, she felt sadness. She missed being with him in the office. They still continued with WhatsApp videos and long phone calls, but she missed being with him in the same room. One day, as Miriam was finishing off for the day, and all the workers had left, Miriam saw the office door open. Right before her eyes stood Wei. Miriam was so shocked, she could not speak. With a couple of strides, Wei reached her and held her in his arms. "What are you doing here?" Miriam finally managed to whisper, still half convinced she was imagining things. Wei smiled, brushing a strand of dust-covered hair from her forehead. "What? I'm not allowed to visit my favorite construction supervisor?" Miriam shook her head in disbelief. "You were supposed to be in Beijing." "I was," he said. "But I realized something." "And what is that?" she asked, folding her arms but unable to hide the smile forming on her face. Wei looked around the small office, then back at her. "That no video call in the world is better than being in the same room with you." Miriam's eyes softened. "You came all the way just to say that?" "Well, that," he said casually, "and also because my parents were tired of hearing me talk about you every day." She laughed. "So they sent you away?" "Exactly. My mother said, if you miss her so much, go to Zambia and stop disturbing us." Miriam laughed again, the sound filling the quiet office. "But that's not the only reason," Wei said, suddenly more serious. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder. "What is that?" Miriam asked. Wei handed it to her. Inside were documents. Miriam read the first page and looked up in surprise. "Work permit. Zambia." Wei nodded. "I've accepted a position with a Chinese engineering company here. They're working on infrastructure projects across the country." Miriam stared at him, stunned. "You mean, you're staying here?" "For a long time," he said softly. "If you'll have me." For a moment, Miriam didn't say anything. Then she stepped forward and hugged him tightly. "You really are crazy," she murmured into his shoulder. Wei laughed. "Maybe. But I like your kind of crazy," she said. They stood there for a moment, the late afternoon sun shining through the office windows and across the dusty construction yard outside. Finally Miriam pulled back and looked at him mischievously. "So," she said, "since you're back, are you ready to wake up early again?" Wei frowned slightly. "Early?" "Yes," she grinned. 5:30 a.m. site inspections." Wei sighed dramatically. "I flew across the world for love," he said, "not for construction work." Miriam laughed and grabbed his hand. "Too late," she said. "Welcome back to Zambia." Wei looked at her, then out across the site, then back at her again. And in that quiet moment, both of them knew something had changed. Distance had tested them. But love had brought them back together. And this time, neither of them planned to leave.